Welcome to the Autism ADHD podcast. It's the place to be for neurodiversity affirming parents and professionals. I'm your host, Holly Blanc-Moses, the mom neurodivergent therapist. Here we chat about emotional regulation, mental health, social support, executive functioning, learning, and more, all aimed at empowering us to support kids and teens with compassion and understanding. I'm thrilled that you joined me today, and I've got some pretty exciting news to share with you. For those rock star therapists listening right now, I've created continuing education training that is tailor-made for you. Take a deep dive into cutting-edge strategies that you can start using today. The CEs you've wanted for so long are finally here. Go to hollyblancmoses.com/CE training and sign up. You are going to love it. The link is also available in the show notes. Now, if you are a parent or educator listening and you know a therapist or a psychologist that is passionate about supporting kids and teens, I greatly appreciate it if you could pass on this great news. Thanks so much again for your support, and let's get started. Welcome back, everyone, to the Autism ADHD podcast. Today, I want to talk about some words that I hear often. My child needs to be more accountable. They need to take responsibility for their actions. They need to admit they made a mistake and stop blaming everyone else. And here's what I picture in my mind when I hear these words. I picture a neurodivergent child standing in front of a yelling parent. Maybe the child is crying. Maybe they are frozen, staring at the floor or staring blankly at the parent. Maybe they shut down. Maybe they're yelling back because, fight has kicked in from the fight or flight response, and they just don't know what else to do. And then I picture the parent, an exhausted, overwhelmed, terrified parent. They are so scared that their child will not make it in the real world if they do not learn to take responsibility. If they don't stop making excuses, if they don't own their mistakes. And then I picture the parent who's trying to hand their child this heavy, awkward bag of garbage. And it's full of shame. It's full of blame. And it's crushing both the parent and the child. And I've been this parent. I have stood in front of my child and said the exact words. You need to take responsibility. In that moment, I was so tired, frustrated. I thought I was teaching him something essential because I always heard that growing up. In that moment, I thought I was preparing him for adulthood by doing this. But what I was actually doing is I was trying to hand over this giant, heavy garbage bag, and I'm calling it a life lesson. And I really want to be open when I'm talking about this because it's just so important. When parents say they want their child to be accountable or to take responsibility, I always find this pattern. There's this massive disconnect between what the parent means and what the child hears or understands. What the parent means is, I want you to admit when you mess up. I want you to apologize. I want you to understand how your actions affect other people. I want you to change. I want you to stop making excuses that make me feel like I'm failing. That last part, that's the part we don't say out loud. But that does not mean it's not there, because it is there. What the child hears is completely different. The child hears, I did something bad again. My mom is mad at me again. My dad or my teacher, everyone is mad at me for some reason. I don't even know what I did wrong, but it must be really bad. I should have known better, because that's what they all tell me. I should know. But sometimes I don't know. Even when I do know the rules, my body moves so much faster than my brain. There's something wrong with me. That child doesn't understand what the parent means by accountability or what they mean by responsibility. They don't understand what that actually looks like, because their ideas are not matching up. The parent and the child's idea is not matching up. What that child does know is that their parent is mad. I mean, really mad. And they feel that shame sitting in their body like a rock, telling them over and over again, you are not good enough. You mess up everything. I want to say this again because it is so important. When we tell neurodivergent kids they need to be more accountable or to take responsibility, we're usually not teaching them anything. We're just making them feel bad about themselves. And I want to give you an example. A parent says, my 10-year-old son hit his sister yesterday. And I asked him why, and he said, she's bothering me. He won't take responsibility. He keeps blaming his sister for what he did. It's important for us to dig deeper, because that is barely the surface. This child is autistic and has pretty significant sensory sensitivities, and his sister was singing loudly next to him while he was really trying to build this Lego idea he had. He had been thinking about it all day. So he's trying to concentrate. He has a plan. No one knows his plan, but he does. He also asked his sister 3 times to stop singing. But she liked singing and she didn't stop. His nervous system just kept getting more and more overwhelmed. The sound felt physically painful, and his body reacted before his brain could catch up. So when the parent asked, why did you hit your sister? He answered honestly, she was bothering me. To the parent, that sounds like an excuse, and I can understand that. Like, he's refusing to take responsibility. But here's what's actually happening. He's trying to explain why. He's trying to communicate why. He genuinely doesn't understand what the parent wants from him. Is hitting okay? No. Does he need better strategies? Absolutely. But shaming him for not taking responsibility when he's actually trying to explain the only way he knows how about why it happened, that teaches him exactly one thing: your words don't matter. and no one's going to take the time to listen to you. We're going to spend more time focusing on this idea of accountability and taking blame than figuring out why it happened in the first place. Here's another example. A 13-year-old girl, ADHDer, forgets to turn in this important assignment. Again, the teacher emails, the parent sits her down. Why didn't you turn it in? She said, I forgot. Parent says, that's not an excuse. You need to take responsibility. You need to be more accountable. She starts crying, but I did forget. I worked on it. I put it in my folder. I just forgot to take it out and turn it in. Her parent thinks she's making excuses, not accepting consequences, not being accountable. But she's not making excuses. She's an ADHD, or she has executive functioning differences. She literally forgot. No one would choose to forget. She doesn't want to forget. Working memory, that's hard for her. The transition from folder to hand to teacher, that in itself is multiple steps, and her brain doesn't always connect them the way neurotypical brains do, just automatically. Does she need support and systems? Yes, she does. Does blaming help her remember? Does shaming help her remember? Not at all. And here's what we're really asking when we demand accountability. We're asking them to take responsibility for having a different brain, for struggling with executive functioning, for experiencing sensory overload, for processing the world differently. It's like demanding a child with glasses take responsibility for needing glasses. Yes, they need to learn to put them on. You need to be able to put on glasses when you need them. But needing them in the first place, that's not their fault. And that's not something to be ashamed of. Here's what most of us struggle with. Neurodivergent kids are already drowning in shame. They already feel like everything they do is wrong. They already know they're different. They can see that. They already know they struggle with things that seem easy for other people. They may even notice that some things are easier for them. But when we pile on more shame in the name of accountability, we're not building character. We're teaching them that they're just broken. This is a really big one. Neurodivergent kids often genuinely don't understand what went wrong or why people are upset. It's really hit me not long ago when I was speaking to a client. Imagine going through life not knowing why people are mad at you. You know, what seems obvious to someone else sometimes is invisible to them. Well, they should know why I'm mad. I shouldn't have to explain myself. They know better. They know the rules. When they're trying to explain, when they say, I didn't know, or I didn't mean to, or again, she was bothering me, we call it excuses. They're not making excuses. They're trying to help us understand their experience, and we just shut it down. I've been guilty about this myself, especially if I was tired and overwhelmed or didn't feel well. We often tell them their explanation doesn't matter, and we're surprised that they struggle explaining themselves when they literally have a difference in social communication. We tell them, just admit you're wrong. No wonder they shut down or yell back or go blank, because we taught them that their experience isn't valid. They're making a big deal out of nothing. They're being dramatic. It's not that loud. That the only acceptable response is, I'm sorry, it's my fault, I was wrong. When parents tell me their child needs to be more accountable, I often ask them, what does that mean? What does accountability look like for you? Most of the time, they have trouble explaining it because it is hard to explain. I'm confused about what accountability means too, because it's different for everyone. It's different across situations. And unless someone gives me specifics with examples, I don't actually know what it means for them. It's really vague. The whole concept is vague. So I think we should think about that. We're demanding our neurodivergent children do something that we have a hard time clearly defining. I often see this, again, overwhelmed parent who is just scared, right? I mean, this is underneath it all. They're scared for their child's future. And I understand that. I am too. I see a parent who's carrying their own heavy bag of shame about their own parenting. They have wounds from their own childhoods. They're struggling. Because here's what's running through their mind most of the time, even when they don't say it. If my child can't remember to put their backpack away, what does that say about me? If my child hits, what does that say about me? What does that say about how I raise them? If my child is 10 and needs constant reminders, have I failed as a parent? And if you're listening right now and you have felt this way, you are not alone, because I feel this way too. It's a terrible feeling. We love our kids so much, and this fear that somehow we're failing them, we're falling short, we're failing our kids. Because maybe if we just parented better, then they'd be more independent. Maybe if we did this, then they'd have more friends. Maybe their struggle is the shining a spotlight on our own inadequacy as parents. When we feel that shame, when we feel that fear, oftentimes we pass it along to our kids without even realizing we're doing it. We say, you need to take responsibility, when what we really mean is, please don't let this be our fault. Please don't let me be failing you. That's what we really mean. Parents are trying so hard, and I get it, but shame doesn't teach responsibility. Blame does not create accountability. Fear does not build the skills our kids need. Understanding does, connection does, teaching does. Let me show you what I mean. I was speaking with a parent a while back, and she was really worried about her son. She loves him so much, and she wants him to take accountability. She was really concerned. He is struggling to take responsibility. He blames other people for the things that he does. I asked for an example. She said, I'll ask him, did you put your backpack away? And he'll say, no, I forgot. And then I say, you need to remember, you need to take responsibility. And then he says to his mom, well, you should have reminded me. Then she talks to him about taking accountability for your own actions and not blaming others. You see what's happening here? This is the circle of shame with no exit. It is hurting their relationship. So the parent feels blamed, the child feels blamed, the backpack stays on the floor, and everyone feels like garbage. I told this parent something that changed how she saw this entire situation. I said, imagine you have this heavy bag of garbage and it is full and awkward to hold. When something goes wrong, we take that big, awkward bag and we hand it to our child. This is your fault. You should have remembered. You need to take responsibility. And that child does not want that horrible, awkward, heavy bag of garbage. So what do? They try to shove it back at you. No, it's your fault. You should have reminded me. You shove that bag of garbage back and forth and back and forth and back and forth because neither one of you wants it. It is heavy. It's so terrible. Meanwhile, the actual problem is not getting solved. It's not. Nothing is getting solved. What if we just put that bag down? What if we stop shoving blame at each other and say, there's a gap here. Let's figure this out together. Here's another situation. Every single day, just dumps her backpack in the middle of the kitchen floor. Every single day. And her mom asked her to put it away. I will. 1 hour later, it's still there. She reminds her again, I forgot. The mom is at her breaking point. You need to take responsibility. You are old enough for this. You should not be forgetting this. Your sister does it, and she's younger than you. There's the garbage getting shoved back and forth. The mom feels blamed because she shouldn't have to remind her. What is wrong with her that she can't do this simple thing? And then, the child feels blamed. Why is everyone mad at me all the time? Why do I always mess up? Neither of them wants this garbage, but they keep shoving at each other anyway. This is what I think of. It's playing hot potato with blame. That's what I kind of think of it. It's like this, no, you take it. No, you take it. Nobody wants it. There is a gap between what the mom assumes her daughter should do without reminders and what she can actually do in that moment. There's a gap there, and filling that gap with garbage does not teach a child anything. It just makes her feel like garbage. So we looked at what's actually happening. When she walks in from school, her brain is just, it's blank. I mean, she's so exhausted from holding it together all day. The transition from school to home is huge. She's overwhelmed. Her medication is worn off. She's hungry. When she walks through that door, her executive functioning is at 0. Putting that backpack away requires, remember the task is this, decide where it goes, pick it up, walk there, put it down, return it. All these steps, all these transitions when her brain is depleted. The environment is distracting. We need to be thinking about that. The TV's on, the siblings are there, the dog's barking, and she's hungry. Her brain is distracting. She's thinking about a game she's been thinking about playing, what snack that she's going to get, whether her friend is mad at her again. They said they're not going to be friends with her anymore. She's worried about who am I going to even play with tomorrow at recess? She feels rushed. The backpack task is standing between her and what she's been wanting to do all day. And here's the kicker. Once she puts that backpack down, it literally disappears from her awareness. This is a real thing. I mean, obviously, she knows a backpack exists in the world. I'm not saying that. It's like it's not there. Again, these aren't excuses. These are real things that affect her ability to complete the task. Here's what we figured out together. And when we do come together in a way where we can hear each other and, come up with ideas and figuring out where we're getting stuck, that's where the beauty happens. What if the backpack didn't have to go away the second she walked in? What if her brain needed a 10-minute transition first? What if there was a hook right next to the door? Not in the closet, not in her room, just right there. What if we paired it with something she's already doing? Backpack on the hook and then snack. What if her mom did it with her for a while? Not in a nagging way where it's annoying to both of them, but maybe putting her own bag up on the hook too. I'm putting my bag up here on the hook. Which hook are you going to put yours on? What if we used a visual reminder by the door? What if we celebrated when we did remember instead of only noticing when she forgot? When we stop shoving that big, awkward, heavy bag of shame and blame back and forth, we can actually problem solve. And this is what happened. The backpack started getting put away more often, not because the child suddenly became more accountable. It's because we worked together on figuring it out. The mom stopped feeling like she was failing as a parent, not because her child magically became more independent, but because she stopped measuring herself against this ridiculous standard. Her relationship with her daughter was the most important thing. She wanted to learn a different way of doing things. And their relationship, it's like night and day. They weren't enemies anymore, shoving garbage at each other. They were on the same side. When we say a child needs to be more accountable, what we often really mean is, I need this child to do what I'm telling them to do when I tell them to do it. I want them to be doing this independently. I want them to do what I think they're supposed to do at their age so I can stop feeling like I'm failing as a parent. Here's the truth. I want you to be with me 100% right now as I say this, because I want you to feel it. Your child's need for support does not mean you're failing. It has nothing to do with that at all. Your child's need for support does not mean you're failing. It simply means they need support. That's it. That's it. That's all it means. When we let go of our own shame, when we stop seeing their struggles as evidence of our parenting failure, we can finally give them what they actually need. Not this giant bag of awkward and heavy garbage, not blame, not vague demands for accountability that we even have trouble defining ourselves, but understanding, support, systems that work for their brain and their body, and the belief that we're on the same team. We're in this together. And again, their need for support has absolutely nothing to do with you failing as a parent, with you being less of a parent, with you should be doing this and I'm failing them and whatever, all those things. That's garbage. You may be thinking, okay, Holly, how do we actually teach responsibility without shame? Well, you take a step back and you take a look. Because if you don't, you're going to be likely to jump to anger and you're not going to be able to see what's really happening or even be open to hearing what's actually happening. When something goes wrong, just be interested. Believe their explanation. Try to understand their experience. It's not the same as yours. It's not going to be. You're two different people. And remember, it's really hard to explain. These are kids that, or even teens, it doesn't even matter really, because social communication is just hard. It's hard to come up with words to even explain things sometimes, especially if you're upset. You might say something like, what was happening for you? I wonder what happened that made that hard. I'd really like to know. I want to know so I can help. You may even want to use a starter sentence. I love those. Something that was hard about that was, or I noticed that might have been tough. I'm wondering which part was the hardest for you. This way of looking at things changes everything. It changes the interaction. It helps us understand what they need. It helps them improve their own way of communicating to us. Focusing on the problem solving, because the goal isn't to make them feel bad. The goal is to help them build skills, build strategies that work for their brain. For example, this seems like it's pretty tough. What would make it feel a little better to you? Would you like me to start the first step? Would you like me to do it with you? What part is the easiest? That's also really valuable information. Third, you teach the skills that are not there yet, right? We don't start in the deep end of the pool. Maybe jumping in isn't the issue, but you have to learn how to swim. A lot of neurodivergent kids, they're not refusing to be responsible. They just need support. They need us to show them, to teach them, to practice with them. They don't need to hear, you should know this by now. I remember hearing that. Holly, you're 12 years old. You should know this by now. Let's just stop saying that. Maybe we can say instead, let me show you. I remember being young, I was trying to sweep off the porch. And I was told, oh, this is horrible. Who taught you how to do this? You're doing a terrible job. Look at all this. Look at all this around here. Look at all this that you missed. And the first thing that popped up is, who taught me? Nobody. Nobody taught me in the way that I needed, or I probably would have been able to do it, but I just really doing the best I can. And I'm getting yelled at for it. The fourth way that comes to mind is separating the action from the person. Separating what the child did from who they are. Because that action, that behavior might have been the wrong thing to do. But that doesn't mean the child is fundamentally wrong. So that action might be the problem, but that child is not the problem. And if you are a human being, which I'd imagine you are, you have also made mistakes. We have all screwed up. We have done things we're ashamed of. I hope for you and for me, I hope people don't think that we are those mistakes, that we are bad people because we made mistakes. You're not bad. I'm not bad. Your child is not bad. Your client is not bad. Your student is not bad. We got to separate those two things. If you hit someone, that action of hitting is not good. We don't want to harm people. But that child is not bad. The way we teach accountability is that hitting didn't solve the problem. You were struggling, something was happening. Maybe they did something that was hurting your ears. They were being loud, or you asked and they didn't stop, or they called you a name and you didn't know what else to do. Your body just went in motion and you hit. The action of hitting, no, that's not okay. But just telling them you're in trouble isn't teaching responsibility at all. It's not problem solving. It's not teaching a skill. Now, the fifth thing that comes up to me, acknowledging that some things are going to be genuinely harder for them. This isn't making excuses. Even as an adult, as a 51-year-old woman, when I hear the word excuse, I just get this sick feeling. Because I remember being told I'm making excuses. And I didn't really understand that when I was younger. What does that mean? I'm telling you the truth. How is that an excuse? I didn't get it. And no one explained it to me. They're basically just saying, I don't believe you, right? I don't believe you. And because I don't believe you, I'm deciding you're making an excuse. Some things are harder, and that's the reality. For example, working memory can be harder for ADHD brains, processing speed, sensory sensitivities, overwhelm. These aren't excuses. These aren't character flaws. We got to think about this. I know this is harder for your brain right now. That's true. Let's figure out what we can do to help you. I was talking to a teacher the other day. A client of mine was really struggling getting up out of the seat, walking around, all these other things. Well, instead of getting in trouble for getting up and walking around, if we take a step back and look and see that he needs to move, his body is saying, I cannot sit here any longer. His body needs to move. It's not a character flaw. It's just movement. So I gave him wiggle seat, and it's making all the difference because he can now move where he is seated. So when we all work together, huge successes can happen. And when you figure out what actually helps, it just can be a game changer for everyone. Because again, it's not about failing. It's not about a bad kid. It's not about bad behavior. It's not about bad parenting. It's not about bad teaching. This is getting together and figuring out and being open to different possibilities. And the last thing I think is really important when it comes to teaching accountability is repair it when you get it wrong, because you will get it wrong. I don't get it wrong as much as I used to, but I still do sometimes. When you realize you've shamed your child in the name of accountability or responsibility, go back and apologize to them. The way I reacted was not okay. I was not listening to you. I should not have made you feel like that. I'm sorry. Let's try this again. Now that's modeling real accountability. There's no shame there. There's no blame. You can say, I made a mistake. I don't want to talk to you that way. I love you. Let's see how this looks in practice. Same scenario. Say the 10-year-old boy who hits his sister. Instead of demanding accountability, the parent just gets interested. Once everyone's calm, maybe they say, that was a big thing. I saw that was, maybe you were upset. I'm wondering what was happening for you. Maybe it's a starter sentence. Something that made me mad was, so say the child explains, she was singing loud and she wouldn't stop. And the parent believes them. The parent says, that sounds like it hurt your ears. I can see that. Hitting doesn't solve the problem, though. I'm wondering if we can work together and come up with a plan of what maybe we could do next time, maybe when she's singing and that hurts your ears. And they problem solve it together. Maybe the sister has a sing time in another room with the parent. You can get really creative. Maybe it's karaoke time or something. Maybe he uses noise canceling headphones, teaching his sister that when he says stop, he really means it because it actually hurts him. What's really neat about that is he feels heard. He feels understood. It's not about shaming him or blaming him or making him feel bad. He's just a kid that needs something different. That's accountability. Not admitting you're bad, but understanding what happened, understanding the impact and learning different ways of doing things. Now, the child who forgot the assignment. So instead of shame, it's curiosity. You worked really hard on that. You finished that assignment. So what do you think happened kind of between the finishing the assignment and turning it in? And she says, I put it in my folder, but I forgot to take it out. And the parent believes her. The transition's hard, keeping all that in your brain. It sounds like we need a plan or a system that maybe could help. Maybe it's about putting a sticky note on the folder, or maybe we can ask your teacher to go by the desks to pick up the assignments instead of all the kids turning it in right when they walk in the door in the classroom in the morning. Maybe she'd be open to that. Or maybe it's about turning it in online. Maybe we take a picture of it with my phone and we email it to the teacher. Maybe that could work too, because papers get lost. The child feels supported, not shamed. The child learns about their brain. Maybe they need something different. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Creating a system that's going to work for everyone, that doesn't even make sense. Again, not shame here. It's this trying something different, seeing if that helps. That's what accountability looks like. Not admit you're wrong and feel bad about it. Instead, it's let's understand what happened. What can we do together? How can I support you? Because there's a lot at stake here. When we demand accountability through shame, we create adults who are terrified of making mistakes. But what if I do something wrong? And what if I say something wrong? They're just scared all the time. We talk about walking on eggshells as parents. We end up having kids grow up as adults who walk on eggshells around everyone. Everyone. These kids grow up to be adults that can't advocate for themselves, who start to doubt themselves and their own experiences. And I know because I'm one of them. If I just tried harder, then I'd be okay. If I just took more on, took more responsibility, if I just stopped making excuses. But I was not making excuses. My brain genuinely works different than most of the people around me. And some things are harder for me. They're actually hard, not because I'm lazy, not because I'm making excuses, but because sometimes environments are not built for me. Systems that other people expect to be working for me don't. When I finally got to know myself and understand the way my brain worked, everything changed, not because I stopped being accountable, but because I could finally be accountable in a way that actually made sense. I can be accountable for setting up systems that work for me. I can ask for help. I can communicate my needs. I know it's okay and safe to ask for help and supports. But what I cannot be accountable for is being neurotypical. And neither can your child. Here's what I really want you to take away from this episode is that shame and blame do not equal accountability. That doesn't even make sense, right? Neurodivergent children aren't lacking shame. They're not lacking blame. They've got more than 100 kids. Giving them more shame and blame doesn't create responsibility or accountability. What they do need, though, is us to believe them when they tell us something's hard, or when they say they forgot, or they say, you didn't remind me. I think that's their way maybe of saying, I need a reminder. They need us to believe them. They need us to help them figure out what works for them so they can advocate for themselves, so they can create that independence. They need us to see that their struggles are real and they're not excuses. They need you to teach them that accountability isn't about being bad. It's about understanding what happened, understanding the impact, and again, working together to do better together. That's real accountability. It doesn't require any giant, heavy, gross bags of garbage. There's a gap between what you expect and what your child or student can do in this moment. And that gap doesn't have to be filled with shame. It can be filled with understanding and openness and support and problem solving, all those things. Let's just all agree to try our best to put down the garbage. Stop shoving it back and forth. Start building things and plans and systems that actually support their needs. And here's what I want to say to the therapists that are listening. When you hear a parent say their child needs to be more accountable, dig deeper, ask them, what does that mean? Ask for examples. Help them put down those bags so they're not having to pass them back and forth anymore. Because our kids, they deserve better than a big bag of garbage labeled life lessons. They deserve understanding, support. They deserve to know that needing help isn't a failure. And so do their parents. They're amazing parents that are showing up every day. They want to have relationships with their kids. They love them so much. So be gentle with them because they need help too. Thank you for listening today. If this episode touched you in any way, please share it with someone. Share it with every parent who's exhausted. Share it with every therapist you know who's trying to help families break these cycles. Because these parents, they are cycle breakers. They're amazing. What matters is what we do from here. You've made mistakes. I've made mistakes. We all have. Again, what matters is what we do from this moment on. And when we mess up, we should take accountability. So let's all agree to do the best we can to put that garbage down and pick up support and understanding instead. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Take care. If you found this podcast helpful, I greatly appreciate it if you could take a second to give it a 5-star review. With your positive feedback, I can continue bringing you free, valuable information. As an extra thanks to you for sticking around, there are special gifts waiting for you in the show notes. You'll find links to free resources on supporting neurodivergent kids and teens with social interaction, emotional regulation, and more. So come on down to the show notes and get your free resources. Take care, and I look forward to seeing you next time.
All content provided is protected under applicable copyright, patent, trademark, and other proprietary rights. All content is provided for informational and educational purposes only. No content is intended to be a substitute for professional medical or psychological diagnosis, advice, or treatment. Information provided does not create an agreement for service between Holly Blanc Moses, Crossvine Clinical Group, the interviewee, Holly Blanc Moses LLC, and the recipient. Consult your physician regarding the applicability of any opinions or recommendations with respect to your symptoms or medical condition or the symptoms or medical condition of your family member. Children or adults who show signs of dangerous behavior toward themselves and/or others should be placed immediately under the care of a qualified professional.